I've done a few videos on the past on how SAP Enable Now tracks the completion of content, specifically when it's been SCORMed and put into an LMS, because there's always questions about whether it's tracking completion correctly or not, usually because some of the settings aren't right. But in this video, I thought I'd look at how things are tracked if you're using Manager for tracking completion. Now, SAP Enable Now really wants you to do that via course assignments, accessed via the learner view. But if you set tracking up to record all of your content, it's fairly easy to see that tracking in progress. So in this video, I'm going to look at the user by course assignment report, because that gives us some useful information, but it's not always the easiest thing to understand. Now, first of all, I've set up a simple course that I'm going to show you the progress of. I've done that in Producer, and I've actually only just set up a simple assessment. So I've got one assessment called Sample Assessment that's just got 3 questions in it. I'll put 3 questions in so it's easy to see the completion percentages. So I have 3 questions in here. All of those, there's an either or choice, and the correct choice is always the first one. And this course has a maximum score of 3, required score of 3. Now, if I go back to Manager, I've set up a course assignment to use this sample assessment. I've called it the same thing. I put the @ on the front just so it appears on the top. The selected object is this quiz object I've created, and I've assigned it just to me, so I'm the only person that sees this. I say I only care about the % complete on here, and the only lesson type within this I care about is test mode. This is the one with the question mark on it. And the user needs to pass the test components, which is the only component here, with a pass mark of 80% or more. Now, given that I've got 3 questions in there, they've got to get all 3 questions right, because if they only get 2 right, that's 66%, which isn't going to meet this pass mark. So that's what I have set up here. Now, an interesting thing about all of this is it used to be back in the day that SAP Enable Now would only really track stuff if you launched it via the learner view and there was an active assessment for it. But that actually changed somewhere along the way, and I'm rather glad it did, because now I can effectively run this course via a direct link and it will still be tracked. So I have published this assessment here. It's been published. I can see I've got my published tag in here, and I'm going to go to the published view of this and play it. So this is my quiz or my assessment. I've called it launch just because I wanted to have a nice easy button for the users to understand, as opposed to it just saying test. But I will click on that to open it, and it goes straight into my questions. Now here's my first question, true or false. The answer is true. Again, it's always the first one in here. Click next. Okay, that's great. Next one. Yes or no. Yes is the correct answer. Continue. And then this or that. This is the correct answer. Next. And we're done. Okay, so we finish that. And we get to here. So it shows me my results here. And you can see that I did pass. I scored 3 out of 3. In this feedback, I can see exactly what my answers were. So I'm just going to close this down now. And if I go back to Manager and I run that report, go to User by Course Assignments, it's got me selected in here, that particular course, and show that. I can see that I've attempted it once, I didn't complete it. And it says that my result is 0%. Now, how is that possible given that I answered all 3 questions correctly? This is the first important point to understand, is that SAP Enable Now credits me with an attempt as soon as I basically launch that and I see that first question. And I answered all 3 questions correctly, but on that last page, I just closed the browser window, which meant that it didn't send the results back to Manager. It just effectively threw away what I'd done. What I needed to do is click that next button or close that player window so that it sent my results back. So that's the very first thing to pay attention to if you find that your tests or any other content is not being flagged as completed. Again, as I've pointed out in previous videos, you've got to close it down the correct way. So let's try that again. I'm going to go back to producer and I'm going to launch it again. Same thing. Launch again. Now here I'm going to answer true or false. It's true. That's correct. That's question 1. Question 2, yes or no. I will say yes. Next. Correct. Now this one I'm going to deliberately get wrong. Okay, because I want to show you some other functionality here. So here I'll say that. Next. Wrong answer. Next. Now here is where I need to be careful and I need to close this down the right way, not just by closing the browser tab here. Now I've got a next button on here because this is supposed to be embedded within a course, and you click on that and it will go to the next book page. But here there is no next book page, so if I click next and I get to here, and this is the important thing. It says I failed, I got 66%, but I'm going to go back to manager and I'm going to run this report again. Same report, same user, click select. Now I have 2 attempts, but this time it has captured my result because I moved off that last question the correct way. So now it knows that I've done that, and it sees, you can see I've got 67% completion here, 66.66 recurring actually. It says completed. Now this is important to understand. It says completed because I went through every question and got to the end, but I did not pass it. Okay, and it's the past thing that you need to pay attention to when you've got test modes in there, which is test mode of a simulation, or you've got a quiz. So now I can see that I failed that because, or I didn't pass it rather, because I only got 66%, but I have tried it twice. You can see so far I've taken 43 seconds on this. Now I'm going to close this one down again that we had open here, which was showing me my results. I'm going to close that. I'll go back to here. I can launch it again from here directly. So I will launch it one more time. And this one again, I'll answer true. Click next, correct. Now the next 2 I'm going to get wrong. So question 2, I get wrong. And question 3, I get wrong. And I get to here. I've scored 1 out of a possible 3. That's what this is showing me. Total possible score is 3. The score you need to get to pass is 3. And what I got, my acquired score, is 1. Okay. So here I click next. I see that I failed again. And at this point, I'm going to jump back to manager. I'm going to run this same report again. And now you can see I've had 3 attempts, but my result still shows as 67%. And this is a nice thing about SAP Enable Now. Both the result and the time needed is taken from your best attempt. So my second attempt was the one where I got 67%. My third attempt, I did even worse and only got 33%. But SAP Enable Now says, well, you got 67% on one of them, so that's what we're going to go with. So no matter how many times you take a test or a quiz, it's always going to credit you with your highest result. So that's another useful thing to remember here. So now I've still completed it because I went all the way through it. I've still not passed it because I've not managed to get 3 out of 3 correct yet. All right, so now I'll go back to it, close this down, and I'll launch it one more time. And this time I'll get it all correct. So true, next, next, yes, next, next, this, next, next. And here I've now passed it completely. I've got the 3 required, scored 3, passed it. Click next to make sure it captures my result again. And I get back to here and I've passed. I'll close this down because I don't need this anymore. Close that down because I don't need it anymore, and go back to manager. And one last time, I will run this same report. And now I see I've got 4 attempts. Time needed on my best attempt, which was my 4th attempt, in 23 seconds. And I scored 100%. That's my best result. And now you can see I've got completed, and I also have passed in here. I passed it because I met the required threshold on that particular test. And that's all there is to it. One last thing I'll point out is I can export this to Excel. And if I open that, I see exactly the same information in here, but how it's reported is slightly different. So let me get both of these things on the screen at the same time. So Manager with my results here, and then Excel. I'll reformat this a bit to make it easier to read. And this is my line here. This is my user line with my information on it. And you can see here, completed shows as 100%. Okay, there was only one component and I passed that, or I completed that. I looked at all of the questions in it. So although it shows just completed here, it actually shows as 100% down here. And then the passed, again, shows as 100 when pass is really yes or no. So in the passed column in this particular report, I'd expect to see 100% or 0%, reflecting yes or no. And the result here is my actual test result of 100%. Attempts in here, and the time again. Again, all for my best effort. So it's exactly the same information you can see in Excel, but the how these things here, completed and passed, are represented varies slightly. This is kind of like text and a graphic. This is a percentage, but it's exactly the same information. Okay, and that's all there is to know about that Use by Course assignment. Hope you found that helpful. If you did, please subscribe.